and welcome to the Guardian Ashes Weekly, supported by Qantas, the spirit of Australia. England's first Test win in Australia since 2011, all done in 2 days. Was that a thrilling game or the end of Test cricket as we know it? Should the curator / groundsman really be forced to hold a press conference to say he didn't mow the grass enough? Bad pitch or bad batting or brilliant bowling? Or a bit of all three? Was this Bazball's defibrillator? We're losing him, clear. Poof, I've got a pulse. A good day for Jacob Bethell, a prodigious talent who apparently had never played cricket before. He played some lovely shots. Ben Duckett was here, being filmed again with slightly better cameras, this time attacking from the off. Josh Tongue, man of the match, the wayward cast, finding his line in the second innings. And a win is a win. And from the depths England have found themselves in during this series, perhaps that is something to cling to. I'm Max Rushden, and this is the Guardian Ashes Weekly. On the panel today, our cricket correspondent, Ali Martin. Hey, Ali.
Hello, Max. Good to see you, mate.
Nice to see you. Our chief sports writer, Barney Ronay. Welcome, Barney.
Hello, everyone.
And Guardian Australia's Geoff Lemon. All right, Geoff?
Good morning.
Lovely Orient says, do you like the longer format of T20 cricket or the short format of an Ashes Test? Not a Rhino says, was this all a conspiracy to keep Bazball alive? And Peter says, wasn't it a great idea to make this a 3-test Ashes series? Honours even with all to play for in Sydney. Yes, Barney, what did we make of this? Seems to be the first obvious question. Barney, you can kick us off.
Yeah, it was confusing, wasn't it? I felt slightly panicked through the whole 2 days watching it, like something was happening so fast that I couldn't really follow it. I was trying to think what it reminded me of, and I realised it reminded me of going to see a movie when you're drunk in the cinema. I remember this happened to me when I was about... It was like this when I was about 18. It was one of the first times I've been on a proper big pub session. You know how you do when you're 18, you kind of like... We stumbled into the cinema afterwards and tried to watch the late night showing of Total Recall and just kept falling asleep in the seats. And I kept waking up and there would be Arnold Schwarzenegger's face saying, "Get out!" And then I'd fall asleep again. And then there'd be Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "There's a bomb in there." And then he went to Mars and his face exploded. And was Sharon Stone his wife? I don't know. Something happened. And it was like, I never got it back with that film. I never understood what was happening. I just felt really panicked by it. And that was how I felt sitting in the press box of the MCG, that I was just being shouted at by people while drunk and couldn't follow the script. I don't know if it felt good. It felt like something, but I don't know if it was good.
The result was definitely good for England. Ending that run, 18 tests without a win in Australia, first since the 10-11 series under Andrew Strauss, and that is a hugely important thing because it was hanging over this team. It was weighing them down, and as Ben Stokes says, that has hit the reset button. It's back down to 0. I mean, they did get the right side of what was a pretty low scoring game, and it's not the best spectacle, especially. I mean, I had a friend who spent day 2 driving 9 hours from Sydney to Melbourne in anticipation of sitting there on day 3 with his lad, looking forward to some cricket. So that was a little bit disappointing for him. But I think England did deserve the win. As much as you can say it was a bit of a lottery pitch, I think they definitely played the best cricket on the second day.
Geoff?
That was a horrible test match. It was right up there with the worst that I can imagine. It just, in terms of the lack of skill, the lack of application. Like, yeah, okay, the pitch was tricky, but nobody seemed interested in doing anything to try to combat that. It was like, I think you could, in a way, I can see the point that Ali's making that, yes, okay, 18 matches without winning a test match in Australia, it's important to win one. But in a way, they still haven't won a test match because that wasn't a test match. It wasn't played like a test match. And I don't think this is a parochial point of view because quite a lot of the English press I was speaking to yesterday were expressing a similar feeling. I was out in the evening with a whole bunch of England supporters who'd come over who were expressing this same dissatisfaction that it didn't feel like that actually won the thing that they wanted to win, to be the better team across a test match. You look at a test match and go, well, who is your best player? Who got you the win? Okay, the bowlers bowled well, but nobody was able to focus and bat in a way that was convincing from either side. So we saw something. We saw a couple of teams fall ass backwards into a result, and one of them happened to end up on the winning side because one of them has to. But it wasn't. There was no quality to the display. It just felt yuck, because it's been in this series where everything's been wrong. Going all the way back to Perth, which felt just as unsatisfying to have a test finish in 2 days in Perth, and it kind of got redeemed because Travis Head put on a big show at the end and smashed 100, and so everybody was happy about that. But that was, even that match wasn't set up like an actual test match should be. So we've had a terrible test match to start. We had a pretty bad one in Brisbane because it was evening sessions and clusters of wickets and all the rest of it, with the pink ball and the day-night thing, which also doesn't really feel fundamentally like test cricket. We had a good one in Adelaide, which did feel like a test match where players were actually able to do something, to use their craft. And then we've had this absolute shit show, which is a fast forward nonsense. It was a farce the way Australia batted in that morning session. Like, they could not care less. Like, they were going, if we get 150, we'll knock these jokers over. They just seemed uninterested in actually applying themselves. And then the way England batted in the chase was equally a joke. The fact that they were talking it up as we were brave out there, they weren't brave. They just went out and slogged as hard as they could. And the fact that can win you a test match should be a source of embarrassment rather than pride. I think this whole series has been it's been a wreck, and I don't think it does anything good for Test cricket to have had such a poor quality of play across the series.
I think you've got to be a bit careful. I mean, I'm not an England fan. I'm not a fan of anyone. I do love watching both these teams. But I think we may be straying from the moral victory of the last series into this was an immoral victory, and this is how we're going to destroy this one. I mean, you have to be very careful. We spoke to the players afterwards, spoke to Root and Bethel, and I actually think that I think Steve Smith was kind of. I think the players' take on this would be, it wasn't an easy pitch. It was too much weighted, it just seemed constantly, and that was bad. But once you're in that space, you just have to keep going and try to get the better of the moments. So none of them, they acknowledged that the pitch was poor and that nobody was saying we played well. But you still got to win the game, and there is skill in what these players do. I think, obviously, the issue is that this is a 5-day format. And none of these players play 5-day formats until they play the 5-day format. All the other cricket they play lasts literally 3 hours. Like, this is entirely novel to them. And there's no Gary Kirstens around who are going to score 67 off 190 balls. It's almost as though they're being asked to do something that is not possible, to balance playing the way we want them to play on that pitch with doing all the other things we ask them to do, which pay the bills. So while it's really easy to say that the players are debauched, lazy, they don't apply themselves, where's the technique gone? I just think there's something illogical. It's almost as though you need to start saying test pitches just can't be like that because you're trying to play the wrong format to people who are just not ready for it. You do literally have people who don't play any red ball cricket. England's Jacob Bethel, 2, possibly, arguably 3 red ball games all year. He's not learning how to do this, and that's not his fault. And he did the best decision in the moment was to, try to do ramps, and he actually played some. I mean, his what's the word? Sashaying on drive was like a Proustian moment, wasn't it? It was like chomping on the Madeleine and thinking, there used to be a thing called Test cricket. And it was one of those moments where you think, oh, that's just class. And that's why people like this player. And actually, I loved the Australian commentators. They're all kind of men of a certain age. It was a few of the old pros from the great team just going, yeah, that was good. I liked that.
Jeff?
There's maybe something to that with the fact that, longer formats are played less. Although I'd say there are plenty of players in both these teams who do play a lot of long form cricket because they're in the Test side. Once you get there, then that's the opportunity you have to play it. I would say, I think where I'm coming from is a frustration with the lack of spectacle, because there wasn't really any skill on show in terms of batting. There was skill on show in terms of bowling.
Sorry, just to be clear, those England players haven't played any red ball cricket since July. They've played the 100. They literally used the white ball tour to warm up for this. So to expect them to suddenly walk out and be in rhythm, it could happen, but we are not they're not being given a chance to prepare. So yes, they play Test cricket, but they haven't played red ball cricket for almost 6 months.
Right, which is something that maybe they should be talking to Rob Key about and Brendan
100%.
McCullum about in terms of the setup for a series like this. And this series was weird in that they also didn't play red ball cricket really because they had a 2-day test and then they played a pink ball game. So at what point have they actually got the rhythm? But you might have thought Adelaide could have done that. But yeah, you don't have players who are prepared technically to play on these kind of surfaces where it's difficult, because it wasn't more difficult than surfaces have been in the past. There would be players who would be able to cope with that pitch at least more confidently. I think the most corrosive sentence in the modern game, which has overtaken play your natural game, is there's going to be one with your name on it, because you hear players use that. That's become the default, the fallback excuse for every time you go out and slog on a difficult wicket and play outrageous shots is, oh, well, I was going to get out any second anyway because it was everything was a hand grenade and there was no hope, and so I just had to slog and get as many as possible before my luck ran out. I don't think that's actually real a lot of the time. It can be. There's the odd genuine lottery pitch like the Gabba pitch against South Africa a few years ago, which was all over the place. We've seen a couple of surfaces in India, like that Ahmedabad one comes to mind, where when England played there, where the ball's going through the surface from ball one. But you don't get a lot of genuine lottery pitches in international cricket, but you get players who use the excuse from a lottery pitch to say, well, I had to play that way. And that's how Australia batted in the morning session, that just this desperation, wild swipes a lot of the time. And that's how England came out and chased, I think.
There was an interesting point about Adelaide that... So England did do their thing here. There was a flicker of the old sort of, warrior spirit, if you can call it. It's not really a warrior spirit, is it? It's more a circus spirit. But they blinked in Adelaide and they didn't play like that, where they had a pitch that actually would have rewarded playing like that. And Cummins made a very interesting point. I mean, he kind of slightly laughed to himself about the fact that they went into their shell there when Australia were bowling in almost 40-degree conditions. And I think that this entire victory here is very much a here's what you could have had situation, in that it doesn't vindicate anyone. It doesn't prove that, actually England are quite good and they got the selections right and the preparation right. It proves the opposite, in that we could have had a much more competitive test series if they'd brought their game from the beginning, and that it was possible to have games that felt more even than this. And it tells you how bad the preparation was. I also, just on Pat Cummins, he is the counter argument to what I was saying earlier about people not playing red ball cricket, so they're not ready for it, in that he just came in Adelaide and was brilliant instantly. But I would also say that he's one of the best cricketers I've ever seen and is an all-time great, and prepared himself perfectly in the nets for that. And that's someone who knows how hard this is and did it perfectly, and is also kind of a genius in doing it.
Sure, and actually he probably could have played at the Gabba, but knew he wasn't quite right, and he had the presence of mind to say, I don't need to do that, which actually takes a lot of, if you think about anybody who wants to play, he was smart enough to not play in that game, I guess.
Obviously, like 22 Pat Cummins, you would have a good test match, but there's a reason why he's so much better than everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, he's an exception to the point that there's almost no point gesturing at it, right? It's like saying, well, Shane Warner's pretty good at bowling leg spin. Like there isn't a realistic point of comparison, I would say. And I do wonder, what might have happened at Adelaide had they been willing to be more aggressive. In terms of a vindication, I would think that, the Melbourne game, it would have been a vindication if they'd played that way and chased 280, but chasing 170 with that kind of style, it was a coin toss. It was either going to work or it wasn't, and the way particularly that Brooke came out and played towards the end, which was just galloping around all over the place and trying massive heaves in every direction. Stokes gets out in a similar way towards the end, which was probably too late for it to be a problem, but it, there was still the chance that, like, you've seen England teams collapse from better positions than that. So I don't know. There was just something so un-test cricket, and it
feels like you didn't like it, Geoff. That's the vibe I'm getting, is you didn't love this 2 days.
I mean, the only reason that England didn't chase 280, we have to say, is because Australia didn't score enough runs. Like they got bowled out for under 160 in both innings. So had they been given the chance to chase 280, maybe they would have done. Because the fact is, the game was over by the time Bethell got out. I mean, you saw the way Khawaja caught the ball. The game was done. He knew it was done. And I think it's hard. It is hard to take issue with the team not chasing 280 when they're only set 175. I mean, that's the only point I'd make.
Should they have carried on batting?
They could have carried on. But
yes, they could have carried on. But I think if there'd been another 40 runs on the total, they probably would have lost it.
I mean, it's nitpicking. I'm nitpicking. They should have chased 280, but they just weren't allowed to do it because no one scored any runs for Australia.
The chase doesn't tell us anything about England's style. That's my point.
Oh, no, it does. It does. They won. It tells us that. It tells us that they won. They won the game.
They were the least worst team in the Test match. You could put it that way.
Well, Ali, what do you think this means for Bazball? I guess that's the conversation we're having here. Does it vindicate it at all? Does it? What does it? Because simultaneously this feels like the most disastrous tour and yet the most successful tour of the last 15 years.
What does it mean for Bazball? I mean, what do you mean? What depends what you mean by Bazball, right? Because Bazball is a word that has just been applied. I mean, it's been declared dead. I think it was declared dead after the Gabba, and we're still talking about it. So what is it? Is it just memories or whatever? I don't know.
Yes, I remember going to watch, this is not related, going to the cinema pissed to watch Babe, Pig in the City, which actually was easier to follow, Barney, if you fell asleep and woke up, than Total Recall, I will say. So I guess McCullum is part of that conversation, is it? Does this victory mean a stay of execution for him? Does it mean that Rob Key is kind of, I don't know, it's just like, does everyone stay?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think all is forgiven because of winning a game. I mean, I don't think it's necessary. I don't like the word dead rubber. There are World Test Championship points on the line. This was a very important win for England just to stop the rot. But it doesn't undo a lot of the mistakes that have been made. It doesn't sort of undo some of the pretty casual approach to preparation, to players' workloads in terms of how they load them up for this series. And we have seen England essentially improve as the series has gone on, which has kind of just underlined that point. I guess, I mean, taking it to 3-2 again, you're winning 2 tests after the Ashes have gone. Is that enough? I don't know. I mean, these are questions that the ECB have got to ask themselves, because as we reported last week, they are minded against wholesale change. But equally, there have been enough mistakes made on this tour and enough sort of divergence between the two leaders, the captain and the head coach. I think the most important voice in here is probably going to be Ben Stokes, and he's not without. He's made mistakes himself along the way. I think some of the messaging after the going 2-0 down just sent players into a bit of a tailspin, and really looking at the last 2 pitches that England played on, there was every reason to think they had it within themselves to take it to 2-2 going into Sydney. And they blinked on that Adelaide pitch, and then and really it has cost them the Ashes here. So, but ultimately, I do think that Ben Stokes will continue captaining this team regardless, and therefore I think his vote and what he says about the coaching style that he would like is going to be quite important there, because him and McCullum, they were showing a hug and a high five at the end there. But I think at some point there's going to be some soul searching for Stokes to say, was it of its time? Was McCullum of its time exactly what we needed at that time? But if this team is going to progress and evolve, do we need some more slightly structured and slightly more disciplined cricket for what is essentially a batch of new guys? I mentioned it previously. The old guard that they squeezed a lot of great performances out, they had all the knowledge and all the tools at their disposal. It was about sort of rediscovering their love of the game. But this next generation coming through, if England are going to be a successful Test side, is this the right coaching setup for them to improve? There seems to be this belief that the minute you play international cricket, well, you're already there. You've proved it. You're good enough. You shouldn't need coaching. I don't personally buy that. I think we've seen it. There's enough, evidence in the past of English cricket, particularly Duncan Fletcher and Andy Flower, in that technical coaching at the highest level can take a team further than just you've made it this far. So it will probably come down to Stokes. It will probably come down to a lot of internal conversations. But because Key and McCullum are sort of so wedded with that contract's extension and with that full backing, I don't know if it's kind of the option for Stokes is, do you want a full reset of the backroom staff, or do we plough on and try and make this backroom staff better, improve, learn from their mistakes? A bit like the Curator's been saying this morning about the MCG pitch. I don't know.
And Barney, I mean, you enjoyed Rob Key's press conference before this game. What do you think his position is?
Well, I think he should give another press conference now. It was incredibly entertaining. It was a brilliant. It was like an unreliable narrator thing. It was kind of like a mockumentary style. I felt myself in the presence of greatness. No, it's not a vindication of anything. It's the exact opposite. It's saying, look, the mistakes you have admitted that you made in preparation are just about maybe ironing out a bit in the last two games, but you sent that team out into those first two games not ready to go. And the fact that you can win a test at this point just says that you should have been ready to fight when they rang the bell, not Monday morning quarterback style. So I think it's the exact opposite of that. If England had collapsed and gone 5-0 and everybody's lost their heads, then you'd say, well, they were never good enough to compete with this Australian team, which is very good. But clearly they can have an even game, certainly far more even games than the first two tests. So that's on the management. And I think there's just been so much evidence of just slack details, we're bored with preparation. We think we can game it. We think it's like a life hack. It's like people on the internet cooking things.
You just get up at 5 a.m. and believe in yourself.
Dunk your face in cold water.
Or stay up until 5 a.m. in their case.
Yeah. And it's boring and it doesn't prepare you properly. You need to do your homework in Test cricket, and no homework was done. And even if you lose, at least you've done the homework. But not doing it and losing, I think the problem is it's going to cost too much money to get rid of these people, and you would be better off spending that money on getting more backup, more. You need a details person in there. You need specialist coaches, and then you can have, Bodie telling you to ride the wave. That's fine, as long as there's someone else saying, but you will also need this surfboard, which I've checked and it does fit you. Don't just run into the waves, And you can ignore that guy. You can ignore the data. You can ignore the briefings you're given. That's fine, so long as you're given them and they're available. Because just looking around the outfield in Adelaide at the Australian cricket machine, and then at this one guy who talks a lot of stuff about transcendent states, you just thought this isn't good enough. It's farcical.
All right, that'll do for part one. Part two, we'll be back in a sec. Hello, Max Rushden here.
And I'm Geoff Lemon.
The Guardian Ashes Weekly is supported by Qantas, the spirit of Australia, and that's not an empty claim. You don't have to wait until you get there. Qantas aims to showcase what's great about the country the moment you step on board. Which brings up a question, Geoff. What do you reckon is the best thing about Australia, putting cricket to one side?
I think that you have to say the food. We've got great producers, fresh ingredients. It's part of the Australian way of life in the modern world, and Australian chefs, Australian producers have had an influence on food around the world.
And you can definitely expect great food from down under on a Qantas flight, featuring menus specially designed for healthier long-haul travelling. What else, Geoff?
I'm going to nominate, controversially, Australian hospitality, which might not always be completely present at the ground if you're an England player. But I think once you get outside the cricket ground, people are, in the main, very welcoming, happy to have visitors and happy to chat to you about where you're from, what you're doing and where you should be going.
And there's lots of that on a Qantas flight to Australia. Nobody knows Australia like Qantas. Book now at Qantas.com. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Ashes Weekly, brought to you with Qantas, the spirit of Australia. Geoff, can we just talk about the pitch? And the curator, Matt Page, who's just done a press conference saying, I didn't mow it enough. Can you just explain to listeners who perhaps don't understand what the difference between a 10mm grass on the wicket and an 8mm beans?
Essentially, it's how much grip the ball is going to get when you thunder a cricket ball into that grass at 135 kilometres an hour. Is it going to get purchase, which means is it going to move laterally? And we did see extravagant lateral movement at times. It wasn't like every ball went, but a few of them did. Think of the one that Bryden Cast bowled to Travis Head that pitched sort of leg stump and it's top of off, right? So there are balls.
He's been doing that all series. Cast has been doing that all series, just waiting for a pitch like this.
Yeah, totally. He finally remembered that he could actually pitch it beyond halfway. I don't know if he's been operating on instructions or not, because he is a better bowler than that, than what he's been in this series, where he's been banging everything in short. So it can be a bit like you go to play Pakistan in the UAE and you come up against a a left-arm spinner like Zulfikar Baba, if you want to go back in the day, who'll bowl a couple that shred, bowl a couple that turn past the edge of the bat, and then get 8 wickets LBW with the straight ball. So fundamentally, it can create that sort of dynamic where a couple of balls move extravagantly off the seam, or with the scrambled seam, the wobble seam that a lot of the players are using now, which makes batters nervous, which means they then get out to more innocuous deliveries because they've already started to change the way that they play. They've already, that's already influenced what sort of line they're defending down, that sort of thing. So that might have played into it, because if you run through dismissals, I don't think, say most of those Australian dismissals on the second morning were not to unplayable balls. Travis Head was, but Cameron Green gets out chasing a very wide ball. Alex Carey just feeds one into the cordon. Usman Khawaja's not looking at a pull shot. When he plays it, Jake Weatherald leaves an in-swinger that hits the stumps, and that has nothing to do with the surface. So 4 of the Australian top 7, as they were carded, rather than, their places were adjusted because of the night watchman. But those players didn't get out because the pitch was unplayable. So it wasn't that it was an impossible surface. It did too much. It did more than you would ideally want it to in a test match. But also, it used to be part of the idea of playing test cricket was that you had to be equipped to play on those kind of surfaces. And to some extent, Australian domestic players are, because Sheffield Shield players have been getting pitches not too dissimilar to that. Maybe it was a bit more lively, but they've had lively wickets on the MCG for years, since 2017-18, which was a previous Ashes test, and the reason that Alistair Cook's got his name up above the Percy Beams bar with the double hundred that he made on a pitch where nobody could score at a quick rate and nobody could get anybody out. So after that dead pitch, they redid things. They brought Matt Page over from Western Australia, where he was curating the pitches at the WACA, because he was seen to be the best curator in the country, and they said, go to work, we'll relay the wicket square, and we'll make the MCG a place where you can get results in test cricket. And they've done that, but definitely overcorrected in this case. And you could say, even going back 4 years, that test where Scott Boland took 6 for 7, that was done in 2.5 days, not even. It was done by lunch on day 3, so it wasn't much longer than this one. So they've had 2 very short Boxing Day tests in a row, but it's not out of step with the domestic wickets that they've had at the MCG in the meantime.
Australian curators, they all do sort of press conferences before each test match, and they're always at pains to stress their independence from the team and from Cricket Australia. Cricket Australia even put out a statement after the Border Gavaskar last year, sort of saying we are proud of the independence of our curators. But I'm just wondering, and this was actually put to me by an Australian journalist in the press conference yesterday, was just, if Nathan Lyon doesn't twang his hammy in Adelaide, does Matt Page take more off that pitch?
I don't think so. I mean, the technicalities of why he left the grass on is something that he's tried to explain in more detail, that they were worried about the hot weather coming in. They wanted to protect the surface. They didn't want it to be too flat. They went deep into day 5 last year when India were here, and there was really only a result in that game because Rishabh Pant had a brain fade and hit one out into the deep in the last session when India should have drawn that match. So they're looking at pitches and thinking, we don't want to have batting draws, so we don't want it to be too placid, but they've overcorrected in terms of the amount of grass that he's left on, which should have been, I think, apparent like a day out when Christmas Day was about 10 degrees, and the forecast for the next couple of days was chilly. Then you might have been able to twig that the pitch wasn't going to get baked by the sun in the first couple of days, and it might need something a little bit more than it had in terms of a haircut. But genuinely, I think the curators are very territorial, and we've seen a couple of English curators be pretty territorial about their wicket squares as well. But these guys, it's about their reputation, and they want to produce a belter of a wicket, and so he'll be furious with himself. He'll be angrier than anybody else is with him, I think, that the pitch that the test has ended up this way. But it also didn't have to end up this way if you had a couple of more capable teams who actually cared. And I think if this were actually a live game, it might have been different as well, because both teams played like, oh, well, we're a bit hungover. We've won, we've lost, whatever. And this one was just a bit of a slap happy, oh, well, see who's standing at the end.
What I worry about is the videos that will surface of Matt Page out on the piss, lost somewhere, not being able to get back to his lawnmower, not being able to get back to Bunnings to buy the best lawnmower he can for this
Digging
wicket.
up a nature strip in suburban Brunswick somewhere, thinking that it's his. Yeah,
Can I point out also that Matt Page literally means unresponsive surface?
Yeah, it's a good point.
It's by the gloss page.
Those are roads. You can bat on a gloss page.
No,
forever.
you want
Yes,
an
sorry.
eggshell page, just
Is that right?
slightly more muted. That would be my direction.
There is a slight irony that, the 2 days running, we have this sort of, I think, is it 3:50 p.m., the tribute to Shane Warne. Everyone is doffing their cap and not a single over of spin is bowled in the entire match. But I guess my question would be, this wasn't a good pitch, don't get me wrong, but what is worse, that or the absolute roads where I'm thinking back to Trent Bridge 2014, Jimmy Anderson made his highest test score of sort of 82, it was an absolute foregone conclusion of a draw. And obviously they've extracted, maximum revenue, the TV hours, et cetera, but it's an absolute bore fest. I don't know. I just think that we're kind of very quick to kind of condemn these pitches, and they're not great. And we've seen 2-day tests in a series, but I've seen worse basically, and worse is when it's just a complete road. Guys are padding their stats. The draw is inevitable. So in that regard, it could be worse.
And that's why I put it back on the teams, Ali, because I don't think it is the surfaces. I think it's teams that are not equipped to play on them, or that just can't be fucked actually trying to adjust to play on these surfaces.
They definitely do care. I mean, this is a lot of money involved in it, and this is their career, and they've never had to get it. But I would say I've heard a lot of stuff that this is the death of Test cricket, the way this game has gone. But on a separate, unrelated point, it's probably good for Test cricket that England have won a game. No one, these tours just can't keep on being 4-0 and 5-0. So if nobody's really, yes, it lasted 2 days and that's bad for cricket. Australia's receipts and there's no cricket on the telly. But England actually winning a test in Australia is good for Test cricket, however it happened, because they've been so uncompetitive.
And actually, I spoke to Cameron Ponsonby from the Athletic on the radio yesterday, and he was sort of saying in the press box there was this real vibe of this is terrible, but then he went out into the stand, and obviously now I had tickets for day 3, slightly annoying for me. I'd wish this day had been today when we're recording, because I'd love to go to a cricket match and watch loads of wickets and have a great time. But actually for those travelling fans, just to see that, especially the ones that have been to Perth and been to Brisbane and Adelaide, have gone to the whole thing, to see that and have that moment, clearly that was a brilliant day to be an England Test fan and be at that Test match. You will have had a great day. The long-term implications are slightly different, I guess. Can we talk about England's bowling? Because we talked a lot about bowling, actually, not talking about the bowling enough, because Bazball is all about batting. But actually, Ali, Josh Tongue had a really good Test match, has looked really good since he's come in. Brydon Carter, we mentioned, actually, to come back in that second innings and actually find his length after it's been a pretty torrid tour. And for Stokes to step up as well, because it was just 3 bowlers, because Atkinson got injured, was really impressive to see those 3, albeit the pitch was nice for them.
Yeah, Brydon Carter's having one of the all-time great Ashes series, 19 wickets of $25. Any bowler would snap their hands off of those figures. No, I'm joking. He's obviously having an utterly bizarre one. I think I'm pleased for him, because I think it shows that even though, he was pretty loose first thing on the second morning, but he really found the right length after that. It's something he's been striving for all series. As Geoff said, he's a better bowler than what we've seen out here in this series. Josh Tongue's a really interesting one, actually, because I think there's a lot of now hindsight, should he have played in Perth, etc. And I suppose the way the Mark Woods tour's gone, you could say yes, but England weren't to know that. They pushed their 95-mile-an-hour guy into the middle. I thought it was a perfectly legitimate decision at the time. But Josh Tongue is asking questions of players, and I actually asked Steve Smith about this in the press conference afterwards. I wasn't trying to sort of rub his nose in the fact that Tongue's got him 4 times in 4 first-class innings, and obviously that contrasts greatly with Jofra Archer. But I just asked him, what is it about Tongue that he does differently? And he was saying that essentially with the, we kind of know this already in some ways, but with the arm going beyond the perpendicular, it forces right-handers to play at deliveries that they believe are coming into the stumps. But with the wobble seam, the ball can then jag at the last split second in either direction. That causes huge problems. And Steve Smith is one of those players who's very much about his sort of calibrations, and you can kind of see that it spins him out a bit about how he deals with that. He compared it to what Scott Boland does, which is fair enough. It's a similar angle. And more broadly on England's attack, I mean, this is with Archer having gone home. This is it. This is the future. Broad's retired, Anderson's retired, Wokes is retired. This is England's current best attack. These are the main guys. And with Atkinson going out, we're probably going to see Potts coming in next. The next guy after that is Fisher. So they've really got to start working on their depth of bowling. And whether they start looking at more traditional English style bowlers in the summer, I don't know. But certainly Josh Tongue has pretty much pushed himself now to first pick. And he's getting better and better. One of the things that was always said to me in the past was that Tongue is a guy who probably had a few issues with self-belief, wasn't quite sure that he belonged there. And I kind of hope that out of this tour, this is the kind of tour that will convince him that he is a Test match bowler. And as Steve Smith said, he's a force to be reckoned with as well.
And Barney, we've talked about Duckett's innings. We haven't talked about that video. Do we need to talk about that video? What did you think of it?
I mean, I don't care really. Obviously, it's a bit silly, and that shouldn't happen. But it's not. If people didn't film people, you wouldn't know anything about it. And this has always happened. And I think I'd be more concerned about the fact that he was somehow out on his own and lost. And where were the rest of the team? Where was security? How did he? I want to find out why that happened. I mean, more basically, I don't really understand why Rob Key took his own break somewhere at the Gold Coast and not where the players were, because possibly just having him around might help with a few. I mean, what's more pressing than that? You got a better engagement than being around the team. I found that a bit odd. But it just, obviously it looks bad. And it's a very easy thing to seize on, but I don't think it's really what was going on there. I mean, the same with the Bethel stuff. Bethel's been involved in a couple of these things. I mean, I wrote in my article, he's a really young man. We spoke to him on the pitch yesterday after the game, and being up close, oh my God, you really are so young.
Yeah.
And sort of glowing with health. And, he speaks well for a very young man. But if he wants to go to a quietly, brightly lit, nice-looking bar and dance to the YMCA with a willing and happy young woman, I, as a father of boys, look at that and think, that looks absolutely fine. You're not stuck behind a screen somewhere. You're being nice. It wasn't like they were doing it was just fun dancing. It was absolutely fine. That's good. That's a good model of young manhood. And he seems to have social skills. He's okay. He seemed happy. The person he was with was happy. I say, go for it.
It's just a generational clash as well, that you've got newspaper editors who still have the mindset that something on video is scandalous evidence, as opposed to a generation of younger people who film everything and post everything and just live in a world where that's what you do. So there's still this kind of frisson of excitement. Oh, somebody's got a video of an England player doing something. There are probably 400 videos taken in that bar at exactly the same moment of various people doing various things, and some of them had an England cricketer in them. Who cares? Who cares?
Yeah. Although I thought my joke, you didn't like my joke, Barney. I said, had it been Ben Duckett having a pushing, shoving thing, and then someone off camera had been like, leave it, Ben, it's not worth it, leave it. And someone else says, look, he doesn't leave anything, so we can't leave this because...
No, yeah, I thought that was a really good joke because...
Yeah, okay, it was clever.
It sort of works in that there's a logic to it, because then it's also a play on the word leave.
Yeah,
and
good,
it's also a reference to things people often say in those situations.
Yeah.
And then it feeds back into the cricket. So technically, it's a really good joke. It is. That's unarguably.
Okay. There's a question from Chris saying, with so many games ending so early and paying fans missing out, is there a case for playing an impromptu T20 or something that day 3 to 5 fans at least get something to watch? I was chatting about this with my friend in the pub yesterday because we were working out how annoyed we were that, we'd really planned to go to this day of cricket and it's a really good day out. And actually, what possibly could drag me to the MCG today that wasn't a test match? Because I'd be going, well, I don't want to watch a T20 with not these. I don't really want to watch a T20 because I've bought a ticket for a test match. I don't know, but is there something... Is it just this is the only way it can be, Geoff? I don't know what there could be.
I think it's possible to have some sort of contingency, whether that's a charity thing. I mean, they used to be pretty good at having weird charity games where they'd wheel out some, superannuated Australian rules footballers or something and make them face stuffed animal television mascots or something like that in the middle.
And Hugh Jackman, is he around? Hugh Jackman,
he's always around. Yeah, he's always around. There's no difficulty getting Hugh Jackman to a test match. The pitch, by the way, would be at its best for batting today and tomorrow. So
Hugh Jackman gets some runs.
Yeah,
Jackman's batting on a road and gets 250 not out.
Give him a hit, and maybe let the 11 least corpulent blokes in the Barmy Army can bowl to him, something like that. I mean, I think there is a kind of open day-ish thing happening at the MCG today. I'm not 100% on that, but having some sort of contingency set up would lessen the blow, put it that way.
Also, Geoff, what has the reaction to Australia's performance been? Because it's something that I hadn't really noticed, that cricket doesn't matter more here than in England, but it matters to more people and it is much more prevalent. Pat Cummins is the face of everything in the adverts. Like, and when you're in the UK, it is not the same. Ben Stokes is not the face of anything, I don't think. Maybe he is, I don't know, some sort of capsule probably that keeps you alive forever. But do you know what I mean? Like everything is advertised. And if it's not him, it's Glenn McGrath. And if it's not him, it's like, so I don't know. It's such a big deal here. And that seems like a really obvious thing to say, but I think if you're in the UK, you perhaps don't know that. What's the impact of this performance? Are they like, well, it doesn't matter, we've won anyway? Or is there a bit of soul searching after this?
Well, in terms of the importance, I always come back to what happens when you're following the test matches around and you fly into whatever city the game's going to be in and you look out the window and what you see is dozens of cricket grounds across the suburbs of every city you fly over. And that's partly because in the winter they're Australian rules football grounds, and so you've got two sports using the same facilities, which helps to support them financially and build the case for those facilities to be built and retained. But it is a much bigger sport. It's a much more prevalent sport socially in Australia than it is in the UK. And that's partly sort of organic and partly by design because authorities in the UK didn't support that. They sold off their grounds and all the rest of it and those kind of conversations we've had. So, yeah, it matters. It matters a lot more than cricket matters in the UK. The results matter more than they do. And people will be... They'll be more pissed off than you might imagine, I suppose, at having dropped a test because the potential whitewash is a tantalising thing for an Australian cricket supporter. And, there have been a couple, there's 05-06 and there's 13-14, but the last two series have been England being absolutely dominated and yet still ended up 4-0. They still snuck in a draw somewhere. So there would have been this appetite to really stick it up this current lot because they were perceived as being more cocky and whatever else it was and all of the Bazball chat and so on. People wanted to completely annihilate that way of cricket. So the fact that they've got one back will be annoying people. And I think it matters. I think Sydney matters for England as well in terms of playing an aggressive style and all the rest of it. If you look at, what you were talking about earlier, will they try to maintain this style? What this style has done overseas has been win one test match in a series where they've been smashed in the others, like as happened in India and in Pakistan. So if that happens here, if it's 4-1 and you won a lucky one at the MCG, that's very different to you came back and you won the last two of the series, and that would really irritate both Australian supporters and the Australian team if England managed to come back and take the last two.
Barney?
Geoff is obviously right. It's hard to underestimate how infuriating this current England team is to Australian cricket in its manner, the things it says, the way it acts. And I would like Australians to appreciate that it can also be deeply infuriating to English people as well. Like that is not a kind of, there's no national boundary there. But just on Australia, I wonder, to make a speculative point, if England could actually do Australian cricket a favour with the next Ashes series in mind by winning in Sydney, because Australia need to get on with rebuilding a team just because of age and a few players coming to the end. I mean, Usman Khawaja has been one of Australia's better batters in this series, but he may well go out at Sydney if they play him, that he may say that's the end. But Australia also needs to do a bit of reshuffling and rebuilding for 2 years from now. And possibly players might roll on a bit too much. There might be less urge to question what exactly is going on with Cameron Green if it's 4-1 or if it had been 5-0. It might actually be quite useful to end up 3-1. Maybe it'll be a draw, maybe it'll rain, or 3-2. Might be good because, one of these teams needs to win away at some point. And Australia have been much closer than England to doing that. But they probably need to think about that now. And it might help to lose in Sydney.
Yeah, and I was thinking, Cam Green, Ali, Weatherall hasn't had an amazing series. I know it's sort of pretty early for him, but I don't know. I'm not necessarily changes for Sydney for Australia, but just in terms of players who aren't totally cemented there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely coming. Cam Green's had a weird year. Did he start the year at number 3, and he's now sort of slid down to number 7?
Well, he batted 8 with the Night Watchman, so he's been all over the order, and they've had 10 different plans for him.
He's the new Moeen Ali. He just bats anywhere. He just slides up and down the order. It's bizarre. Yeah, I know you can see it, and I do think with Weatherall, he's a player who. His one score, that 70-odd he got in Brisbane was, he himself admitted afterwards, I just battered because I was being fed some absolute trash from England. So I just I don't think he would use the word trash, but he sort of admitted that it wasn't the most taxing or sort of, it wasn't a statement innings from him. And so there'd be questions around the opening mark, which has been there for a while. I guess Steve Smith is, as Geoff sort of pointed out at the start of the series, he's not probably going to hit those highs of before. He's still clearly a very good player and he would do a job, but he's 36 now. The bowlers are getting pretty old in the tooth as well. In fact, Michael Nesso has come in, he's 35. Nice to see Jai Richardson play yesterday. He wasn't as quick as I was expecting, but he, it was his first test back for a while and he's 29, so there's a bit more there. But there are going to be some considerable holes. Nathan Lyon is he's undergoing hamstring surgery, which is that is a major injury, and it's going to ask a lot of him to sort of go back to the well and get himself back up for Test cricket, and particularly in a team that is almost sort of moving away from spin bowling as well. So there is a lot. There's a lot for Australia to do in the intervening time between now and 27. England haven't lost a series at home since 2014. Their home record is very strong. So they are going to have to do a lot of. I think they've been aware of it for a while. You can hear the way they're talking, but how they sort of balance sustaining results and with guys who are old but still delivering. With kind of upgrading and evolving this team is something that is going to be the bigger test of George Bailey, I'd say, than what he's had so far.
Hang on, are we saying Australia are in crisis?
Yes, we are, Barney, we are.
Wow. It's amazing how things flip around, isn't it? Like, how are they going to cope with this?
Yeah, right.
They're totally screwed. And for England, Ali, Potts comes in for Atkinson, and that would be it, you think?
I suspect that would be the one change. People talk about Sydney being a place where you have a spinner, but I don't think that's actually been accurate for about 20 years. I do think the nature of the pitch of the MCG did allow England to slightly get away with their selection, because I still am not comfortable with Will Jacks as one of sort of 4 frontline bowlers. I said it before, but what that does for Ben Stokes and what it does for England's ability to take 20 wickets is questionable, but I don't see them changing. I don't see Bashir being picked, and I don't see an all-pace attack, because that would now involve Matthew Fisher playing. So yeah, I think the one change, Matthew Potts to come in, and a big opportunity for him actually, because he came in for the last test against New Zealand a year ago, and he started the match really well, and he kind of totally ran out of gas halfway through, because it's very hard to sort of get up to speed just with net bowling unless you're a freak like Pat Cummins. So a big opportunity for him, I'd expect, in Sydney, and and that will kind of inform England's selection looking ahead as they try and sort of rebuild this new bowling attack.
All right. Well, that'll do for today. I had a nice time. We'll do it all again after Sydney for the final ever Guardian Ashes Weekly until the next Ashes, if we're recommissioned. But we don't need to look ahead. We're not in crisis. Maybe we are in crisis. Who knows?
We're all a bit old. We probably need to move some on, make way for fresh talent.
No, but we're still delivering, Geoff. We're still delivering. So how do you square that?
It's very difficult, isn't it? Anyway, thanks everybody. Thank you, Geoff.
No problem.
Thank you, Ali.
Cheers, Max.
Thank you, Barney.
Cheers, everyone.
You should have said cheers, Barney, again. But congratulations. Ashes Weekly is produced by Nick Harmon. Our executive producer is Daniel Simo. The theme tune is by Rudy Zagadlo. We'll be back after the final test.